So, John, let's review some of these YouTube questions. We actually had a bunch earlier, and it's going to be hard to kind of discern where we're at. Let's see. From Mr. Sinister, would you guys say, after what you've seen in the preseason, that the Bengals must look for offensive line help during cut day across the league, or roll with what they have? John?
Mr. Sinister, thanks for tuning in. You donated to the Puppet Fund on DNH Sports and Daddy's channel. Thank you personally from me. Yeah, I think they will at least scour some waiver cuts on Saturday, just because they may come off as confident that that group is finalized, but based off what we've seen, that's probably not the true sentiment. And I do think that there always is some surprise cuts around the league, and the quality of offensive line play around the league is not very high right now. So we could see some at one point promising names, maybe get cut in the final year or two of the rookie deals, and sometimes all it takes is a change of scenery. So whether that's a guard like Earl Watford, who just got released from Chicago, or maybe another tackle if they let go of like one of Aboye or Fisher, that's definitely something that we should not expect, but we shouldn't be surprised if it happens.
Yeah. It depends on who's available, because I looked a little while ago. I looked at available, right tackles and whatnot, and the pickings were slim in terms of availability then, because most have been picked up during the free agency period. But you never know. I mean, the Bengals let go of George Iloka kind of middle of the preseason, and there are other guys that are, mid-level, pretty decent players that are maybe making a little more money than they should, that could come in and maybe be a better scheme fit with the Bengals. You never know. I think the Bengals probably view what they have as a long game. They look at it as, they're guys here. We have a new coach. Let's see what he could get out of what we have. But I also think that there are, as we mentioned and you said earlier, John, the window is closing a bit for this team. Guys that were once, the class of 2010, 2011, that were so young and, kept this team in those 5 straight consecutive playoff appearances. All of a sudden, they're all approaching 30. And, there's just Marvin Lewis is only on a 2-year contract. We know that, he seems to have a never ending type of contract in Cincinnati, but the window, yeah, exactly. The window is kind of closing a bit. So, the urgency level could be there in terms of, hey, let's make a move. We've seen them, we talked about it on the program before, we've seen them do stuff at the end of free agency, be it through trades or pick up guys. Brandon Tate was a late addition who stuck with the club for a handful of years. Reggie Nelson was a trade they made at the end of preseason. And he was a great player for the Bengals. So Kelly Jennings, other guys were added during the summer. So don't be surprised if there's an addition, but I just don't know. It totally depends on who is going to be out there and what the fit may be for the Bengals. And who knows, maybe even if there's an injury, God forbid, in this next game coming up. But good stuff, and I'm glad to hear that Mr. Sinister also donated to the fund for the other program that you are on. That's good stuff. I love hearing generosity like that. Hearing a lot. I mean, there's probably three different people at least in the live YouTube chat. Does Dennard get signed now that the Bengals doled out a bunch of money to Atkins and Dunlap there? So we talked about it a little bit, but do you think they get something done pretty soon with him or at all, because he is now in that final year here of his deal, and they've got the money tied up a bit into Drake Kirkpatrick. They've got William Jackson in the fold for a handful of years, and Dennard is kind of their slot guy, plays outside occasionally, but I guess it's a matter of value and all of that. But do you think they get a deal done with him, an extension done?
I wish I could say yes or no with any confidence, because we just have not heard anything about this. And I'm sure that they have been working on it, because I think it's way more likely that they get a deal done now than if they get a deal done, like after free agency opens, because I do think with his prospects being 26, 27 years old, hopefully coming off 2 very solid years at nickel cornerback, which is a position that's obviously rising in value in the modern NFL defense. I think that I'm going to say he doesn't, just because it's the guess, to be honest with you. But I think if we were to see an extension, it would be Tyler Kroft, because I think that there is more uncertainty at the tight end position with Eifert and Uzoma also entering free agent deals, and they might just want to have one of those guys under contract beyond this year. But for Dennard, I'm going to say no, but I have really no confidence in that answer, because I just have no idea.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because the Bengals love cornerbacks, and they love drafting them high, and they love paying them quite a bit of money. They paid Drake Kirkpatrick quite a bit of money. They paid Adam Jones quite a bit of money over a handful of years that he was with the club on a number of different contracts, and with issues, not the same type of issues that he had when he was with Tennessee and Dallas and stuff, but there were definitely some off-field stuff, and they still paid him some money. They'll probably, if William Jackson ends up living to this off-season hype that he's been receiving this summer here, they'll probably be paying him quite a bit of money. So is it like, Dennard, he was a disappointment at the beginning of his career, but has kind of stepped up his play of late. I think they want to keep him, but the price has to be right. And if the Bengals again end up picking, in that first round in the teens or 20s, that might just be a more affordable option for another cornerback that they look at. But obviously, with offensive line still seeming to be a glaring issue, that's a pretty big decision to make there. So I'd like to think they get it done. Because I think they've made it a summer priority, but we'll see. So if you want to get in touch with us on the line, do so. There was and I wanted to get to this very broad scoped question, but it seems to be from a new listener, at least one that I do not recognize. And it does kind of tie into the performance we talked about by the Bengals against the Bills. Amanda Bramble in the live YouTube chat says, do you think we are going to make it to the playoffs this year? We talked about the Jekyll and Hyde nature. We talked about all of that. I think more stuff needs to be sorted out with the final roster and all that kind of stuff. But just your general inclination, John. Now, when we did the schedule release and all that kind of stuff, we like to do that win by win, win, loss, win, loss. I think most people kind of had them in the 8 to 10 win range, they thought, especially after the draft and free agency. Now we've seen them play a bit. We've seen them probably play a little bit better overall than maybe we thought at times, but also have some familiar issues and expected issues. So just as we sit here now, right before the regular season, what do you think?
I think that the AFC North is as wide open as it's ever been, because I think the Steelers are in line for some form of regression. The Bengals always compete with the Ravens, and the Browns are, who knows what they're going to do. I understand the arguments for 6-10 up through 10-6 completely evenly. And that's why my thoughts and my predictions kind of lie with the 8-8 range. And obviously, even in a weak AFC, that's not enough to make the playoffs. I just think that this team has a lot going for them right now, like what we talked about with the ability to be explosive on offense and to shut down passing games on defense. But I also think that if they were to win, 9 to 11 games, everything would have to go right. Key players would have to stay healthy. Guys who haven't stayed healthy in the past, I'm talking Cordy Glenn, Eifert, and Ross. I think if those guys play at least 12 games each, then 10, 11 wins is very much possible. And along with that, the schedule it's a third place schedule, and there's only like a few games where I have minimal confidence that they can actually win. Most of the games on the schedule are winnable. So with all that saying, I'm going to say no because I'm a natural pessimist, I guess. But I do think that they're going to be better than last year. And I do think that the division and the conference is wide open. So I'm definitely not ruling it out. I'm just looking at the probability of everything clicking and everything going right. It's obviously very slim for any team in the NFL. And I just think that they're just not in a position yet to survive bumps that could very well happen down the road.
Yeah, I think that it's probably going to be, and I'm going to be a little short because we do have a call on the line. It's going to be, to me, I think they'll have enough wins to be in the dance or in the conversation. I just think they'll need help. And I think you mentioned the conference is more open. You know, there's a change at quarterback for the Chiefs that could go amazing for them, or it could go, terrible. The Chargers probably seem to be pretty strong, but they just keep losing guys in the preseason to major injuries all the time. The Raiders were good a couple of years ago. They weren't good last year. The Patriots are the Patriots, but we said Father Time's undefeated. It just he's really taking his time with Tom Brady. So there's a lot to dissect there, but pretty open conference. I think they're going to need some help. I do think they'll probably still be in that 8 to 10 win range, but probably need some help. But there's probably going to be some amazing weeks and some very, very frustrating weeks from this team ahead. And I think that's probably something that's going to be expected. So we do have a caller on the line. It is Loyal to a Fault, who I think that is the screen name or your username on cincyjungle.com. I see you comment on a lot of our articles, and appreciate you tuning in. What was your question?
My question is just, I wanted to know what you guys thought about that cryptic Marvin Lewis response to the question regarding Westerman that they gave in the press conference yesterday or a couple days ago. He was basically asked, why is Westerman not getting a shot on the right side? His answer was, the sides are synonymous. I don't know how that answers the question. I don't know what that lends to more questions than answers.
Right, and
I guess I was just wondering what you guys thought.
Yeah, and Loyal to a Fault means I'm getting the impression that you have been a Bengals fan for a long time. And if you've been a Bengals fan for a long time, you will have known or seen a lot of interesting Marvin Lewis pressers where he's either Mr. Giggles about stuff or he's scowl and 2-word answers about stuff. So I appreciate the call. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening on the thanks for reading all our material at Cincy Jungle as well, Loyal, and we'll take your question off the air here.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
All right, thanks, buddy. Yeah, so you were able to hear him, right, John?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, to me, I think there's some mental aspects of Christian Westerman's game that he may not be grasping in terms of alignments and calls and all that kind of stuff. And our own Josh Kirkendall at Cincy Jungle wrote a nice piece up on that as well. But your thoughts on Westerman? Everybody is clamoring for him to take the right guard job. And for some reason, he's getting no time there in preseason, and he's backing up at left guard.
Yeah, this was all Marvin had to do is just throw in a giggle, and it's just like the most classic Marvin Lewis comment of all time. I'm young. I don't have a lot of experience with NFL coach speak and stuff like that, but I've come to learn that some coaches love being right more than doing the right thing. And I think that with the way that they've handled the Westerman situation, they've made him a backup, and the tape doesn't lie. He looks really impressive on that second team offensive line. He hasn't had a bad week yet. He obviously left the game early last week, but he still has looked really good. And we've seen, the right guard spot not look very good, but they kind of made their bed with their stance on Westerman. And I can't help but feeling this is just them sticking to their guns and just wanting to be right and promoting some type of narrative with Westerman to try to appease people who are questionable about the whole situation. I'm personally not buying it because I have my own eyeballs, and all of you guys do too. And you've seen the way that Westerman's played. And you don't have to know the play call. You don't have to know the assignments to know that if a guy can play, he can play, even on the offensive line. And he can, and he has value on the roster. So I just think this is more of a case of them wanting to be right than them just owning up to something that they were initially wrong at.
Yeah, and in an off season that has seemed to buck some trends in terms of Marvin Lewis and the organization, getting rid of some of these valued veterans, LaFell, Loca, all those guys like that, spending quite a bit of money on extensions. Yes, they've done that before, but not to that level in terms of money. There are some things that seem to be different. The coaching staff turnover, all of that. This is vintage Marvin. This is vintage Marvin. And if you remember, you said you're a bit younger. You may or may not remember this, John. But when Carlos Dunlap, the guy who just received a $45 million contract, when he was a rookie in 2010, he did not play much at all the first half of the season because there were rumblings of not practicing the right way, and he needs to get with the program and all that kind of stuff. Lo and behold, the Bengals have a pretty terrible season, so they start playing him more to see what they have out of the young guys when the season's already out of control, and the guy has almost double-digit sacks. And as many
franchise record.
Yeah, he ended up doing it. But in that season, though, I'm saying he played maybe half a season, and he had almost double-digit sacks that year. And you sit here and you go, okay, well, yes, I get the old school coach mentality of practice the right way and show the right attitude and all of that kind of stuff, but that stuff doesn't necessarily translate all the time to the pros in terms of sending a message or, these are guys making a lot of money, and these aren't guys on scholarship and, coach is going to pull my scholarship if I don't, work out the right way and all that kind of stuff. That's not, yes, there are suspensions for conduct detrimental to the team, and yes, you could be cut and all that kind of stuff. But just to send a message and as a possible detriment to your team at a position that you desperately need some help at, I don't know. But I also look at it from the standpoint of, well, this was a guy who was largely viewed as a second or third round talent a couple years ago when he came out of the draft in terms of draft analysts, fell all the way to the 5th round. So maybe there's something there that they just don't want to publicly say, whether it's study habits, whatever, that they don't like, the teams didn't like in the pre-draft process, and that's why he fell further than expected. But again, this is something that's detrimental to the team and, potentially detrimental. And we also know Marvin Lewis doesn't like Pro Football Focus. He's publicly said that before. I believe he called it a dumbass website at some point. Frank Pollock kind of said the same thing about some of his guys' performance this preseason. Granted, that's not scripture in terms of what you expect from player performance, but it is a nice barometer. It is a valuable barometer to use. The Bengals don't seem to use that. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe is it going to take poor run blocking and Dalton getting planted on his butt from the right side in order for them to potentially say, okay, Westerman, gosh, please. I don't know. I hope not. But to me, he seems to be a better fit at guard than the other two, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So, Loyal, we don't have an answer for you. If we can get Marvin on the program, we'll try. And maybe he can answer that one for you. We'll see. And also, Mixon texted us kind of asking the same question. Why is Christian Westerman in the doghouse? He sent us a text on the OBI line asking the same question. So appreciate that, guys. Let's get out of here, John. We've run long a little bit. We've been expanding, as I mentioned. This program is on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, CincyJungle.com, now on Stitcher and the Google Play app. And you can get in touch with us via Twitter, the OB Insider, at Bengals OBI, and via email, the OB Insider at gmail.com.